What I want to do is I want to convert these 5 images into black and white. I want to choose one of the film stocks that I used back in the film days. So let's go and just take a look at what the options might be. If I go under filter, I can choose black and white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to find some Kodak and some Fuji Neopan. So let's go down here, and here's Neopan 1600. What I'm going to do, so it's going to be easy for me to locate once we're converting and looking at different things, is I'm going to star this guy as a favorite. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and I'm going to go to Kodaks. Come on, Kodak, let's go. All right, so I'm going to take a look at the T-Max 400. I'm going to look at T-Max 3200, and I'm going to look at the Tri-X. So now that I've got my guys done that way, what I'm going to do is click on this, and we can start to see what we have as far as favorites are concerned. So I'm showing my favorites here, but they're also showing up in this here. I guess we get both of them. I'm not 100% sure why we got them both, but whatever. Okay, so let's take a look at these different film stocks to see what they actually do for us. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to scoot this down a little bit, and I'm at the Fuji Neopan 1600. And as you can see, there is some grain, but even going back to the 80s and 90s when this film was in use, this amount of grain was considered very acceptable. Then they came along with Kodak 3200, and we can see that the grain is a little bit finer than the Neopan 1600. It's a little bit finer, but it's not necessarily bad either way. And then we can go over to T-Max 400, and you can see that T-Max 400, very fine grain, very, very fine grain. Well, that's the whole idea behind the T-Max films as opposed to the Tri-X and all that kind of stuff. The traditional films had traditional grain. The T-Max films have tubular grain, whatever the hell that is, but it just produced smaller, finer grain than the previous generations of films. And then we go over to the Tri-X. And if I click on that, you'll see this is what Tri-X would give us as far as grain is concerned. The new updated version of Tri-X, which is the T-Max, would give us this. Unbelievable. Night and day. Anyways, what I want to do is I want to recreate, as an example, T-Max 400, but I want to do a little bit of a modification. So if I zoom out on this, I can tell that my darks are really, really dark. So I'm going to want to lighten the blacks and the dark shadows up a little bit. And I might even want to lighten the gold yellow of this guy's uniform. So let's see how we can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to customize, and in the customize panel over here, or tab, whatever you want to call it, we have the film scan optimizer. I'll show you that in a minute. But under the film section, development, I can lighten and darken the exposure, the highlights, the midtones, the shadows, and the blacks. I can do it that way. Or I can come down here and I can use something that will help us nail down the areas that we're going to affect a little more precisely. And that's using the Luminosity Masks, which are based on the 11 zones of the zone system. So if I come over here and turn on the Luminosity Mask and click on the plus sign here, by default, the Luminosity Mask selector, if you will, selects zone 5. If we take a look under the zone scale here and we see the gradient from black to white, and right in the middle is zone 5, and this is our starting point. So let's take a look here. So by default we're in the zone 5, and you can see this by the upper handles here, and then the lower handles here are there to allow us to either feather the transition a little more or to tighten things up a little more. What I want to do is I want to get this down between 0 and 1. So let's see, do I just move this across like that? Looks like it. So I've got this set here, and now you can see the red in the window is my mask. I can change the color of the mask if I want to, and I can actually turn off the mask. I can change the opacity of the mask. I'm just going to leave it where it is. Now, I can adjust things by moving stuff around there, or I can actually come in and start using a brush of some nature and everything else. I'll let you figure that out. I just need to explain to you how this stuff is going. So I'm down here at this point. I've got 16 here and 40 at that end. If I was to raise or lower that, this would, let me just move it. See how it goes up and goes down. If I go all the way up to here and let go, you can see that we're getting everything in the image. So I'm just going to come in here, highlight that, type 40, hit tab to move back, and this is the area that's going to be affected. If I want to, I can expand this out a little bit further, but I may just keep it where it is. All right, so now that we have our parameters set in the zone system, there's a couple of things that I want to remove from the image that are visually distracting. One is the red mask, so I'm just going to click on the show mask checkbox, and the other is the brush setting. Since I'm not using the brush, I don't want to have that as something that's going to distract me. Okay, so now let's just go down a little bit further here to see how we can actually lighten the shadow area that I've highlighted. Below the gradient, we see that there's something called white balance. I don't need to use that because I'm fine with this as it is in black and white. I can affect the overall contrast of this image, but I don't want to do that either. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of the light panel here, where we have exposure, highlights, midtones, shadows, and blacks, and I'm going to increase the shadows to about 30. And you can see that the dark areas have gotten a little bit lighter. That's perfect. So now, if I come down here, I can show you that we have another contrast option, but this gives us contrast options to a greater degree. Not interested in that at all. We have more white balance. Not interested in that at all. Channel mixer. That's the one that I'm interested in. Using the channel mixer and going to the yellow slider here, I can actually lighten the jersey. So I'm just going to move this up to about 15. There we go. Got it at 15. That has lightened the jersey somewhat. If I turn the channel mixer adjustment off, we can see that I have indeed lightened that. That's fine. That's perfect. Good to go. Next, we have a tone curve, and the tone curve here is the same as the tone curve in every other editing dialog box. After that, we have automated corrections, and if I click on that, we can see that we can remove noise if we wanted to. I choose not to, so I'm just going to dismiss that. Next, I want to talk about graphical effects. So let's click on that and see what's offered there. We have 3 different effects. First one is frames, the next one is texture, and the last one is light leak. So let's see what frames are all about. So if we click on this, we can choose from this drop-down menu a variety of different types of frames. So what people used to use back, in the beginning of the digital, is they would actually run this analog roll sprocket set on their images that they were putting up on their websites. And they thought it was cool. And it was. There's no doubt about it. It was something interesting to do for your images. Now, something else that people used to do, I'm going to choose no frame there for a second. Something else that people used to do is put a white border around your image. So it would be something like this. Now, when we're working with the white frame or border, this is something we used to get our prints back from the photo lab with. They all had a white border on them. And the white border is there so that you could pick up the photograph without putting your fingerprints on the actual image itself. And then at some point, someone decided, let's try borderless prints. And then we had 2 or 3 decades of borderless prints, but we used to always put a white frame around our images. You can increase the size. Mine's at 25. You can increase the size, the position, and rotate and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to choose no frame, and we're going to get rid of that. We're going to go to texture. Now, texture is an interesting thing. They've added some high quality textures to our images, and there's a variety of different ones you can use. I remember I used to add textures to my images by downloading these textures from the internet and applying them to certain images that I had. I'm going to choose not to add a texture as well, but this is an option, and some images look really, really good with them. This one wouldn't, but some of the more artistic images would look really good with a texture on them. And then we have something called light leaks. I think we all know what a light leak is. Light leak. And we could add something like this. Looks like some light has leaked. But let's see what else we got. You got another light leak. There you go. And you can see that it's kind of showing itself there. I'm not a fan of these, but you may want to try some of them out. At this point, the only thing that I would use from the graphical effects is possibly the white frame and possibly a texture to one of my what I would call an artistic photograph as opposed to a record of what actually happened in the world. The next section is lens effects. So if we click on that, we can come down here and we can see that we have a couple of things in the lens effects panel. We have a filter, creative vignetting, and blur. Now the filter are the same filters that are similar to what we would use if we were shooting black and white film in a film camera, and we would use these different filters to alter colors and shades and tones. That's not something I'm interested in, so I'm just going to walk away from that one. Creative vignetting, again, I don't want to use it, but let's just see what's going on here. If I turn the intensity all the way down just for effect, you can see how that works, and I can move my midpoint to tighten it up or expand it out. I can change the transition or the feathering of that to tighten things up or soften them up. I can change the roundness, and I can set the center. I'm interested in none of those, so I'm just going to get out of that. The blur one, it's interesting. Not sure I'd want to use it too often, but it's there. And the vignetting, if I move this, we have two settings for the blur, vignetting and soft focus. So if I use vignetting, we're going to see something that we would expect. The blur is happening outside or where the vignetting is, and the center of the image is holding on to its clear focus. And then we can go and choose soft focus, and we can just soft focus the whole image. Again, nothing that I would want to use in this. So I'm just going to reset that and say goodbye. Click on those guys to collapse that. And let's go back up to the top here for a second. And I'm just going to click on this to get rid of that distraction. I'm going to click on this to get rid of that distraction. And I don't want to do anything with split toning, believe me. What I want to talk about is your film rendering. And I have Kodak T-Max 400 as my film, and we know that that is what I chose. But I wanted to bring back some of the grain that we had in Tri-X. So what I'm going to do is under the grain option, I'm going to choose Tri-X, but before I do that, I want to zoom in so you can see this. So I'm going to choose Tri-X 400. And there, now I have the grain of Tri-X 400, but I have all the other characteristics of the T-Max. I'm going to show you that different black and white films have different characteristics and respond to different wavelengths differently. So first of all, I have T-Max 400. I'm putting this in there, and I'm just going to reduce the intensity to about 50. So I have a little bit of grain in there, but I have all the other characteristics of T-Max film. That's fantastic. Now, the next thing is we have a couple of options as far as the grain structure is concerned. The grain structure differs based on the, well, for lack of better words, the size of the film. So the default here is 24 by 36, which is a traditional 35 millimeter negative, but then we can change the grain structure by choosing medium format or choosing large format or custom. You can choose different ones there. I'm choosing to leave this at the 24 by 36. So now, I like this. I'm happy with this. I think this is going to be really, really cool. We've got some dark tones that have a little bit of texture and detail. We have some highlights up here. We've got it all as far as I'm concerned at this point in time. So now what I want to do is I want to save this as a preset. In order to save it, in order to get the option to save it as a preset, I have to apply it. So there we go. You just saw the processing indicator there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Save Settings as Preset. I need to give this a name, and then I need to put in a little bit of a description. I don't have to, but I choose to. So the name that I'm going to give this preset is this, 01 Digital Kodak T-Max 400. Now, as far as the description is concerned, this is what I'm going to put in. So this preset is a modified version of DxO's Kodak T-Max 400, blah, 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 blah. And even the values are set in here. So, great. Click OK. Awesome. So now this is going to be living in the My Custom Presets, if you will. So if I come over to the Filter menu here and come down to My Presets, we should be able to find it down here under My Presets. There's a whole bunch of them that are in here. Anyways, this is all I'm interested in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the star. So that is now a favorite. And then what I'm going to do is come in here and get rid of all of this kind of stuff. Come over to black and white, not that I have to, and come over here and click on favorites. So now you'll see that this new one has been added to the favorites of these other guys. Make sense? So now if we scoot down a little bit, we can see that not only are my 5 favorites showing at the top here, but they're also showing up under legacy. Well, the 4 of them are sitting there in the legacy, and the 5th one is down under here in my presets by itself. If I choose just my presets, there it is right up here, my presets. The last piece of this project is to do a batch process. In other words, I want to select all of these guys and I want to apply that new digital T-Max that I just created to all of these images. So I'm going to select them all in the browser. I'm going to go under File. I'm going to choose Batch Processing. And in here, it's listing all the images I want to work on. And I'm being asked to choose. So I'm going to go to Custom Presets and choose 01 Digital Kodak T-Max 400. I'm going to choose TIFF. And I'm going to choose 8-bit. Save them in the same folder or into a different folder. Why don't I just click on that, and then I'm going to navigate over to here. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this one Batch Process. Click on that. I don't want to add any suffix to these guys because they're going into a totally different folder. I'm just going to click Process. And this is not taking very long at all. Now, the other thing is these images are not that large to begin with, so good to go. If I come over here, I can click on the Batch Process folder, and we can see that they've all been processed. This is amazing. Now, what I want to do is I want to talk about the Film Scan Optimizer option in FilmPack. So I'm going to click on this folder, and inside here you're going to see an image, and this is the image that you saw as the thumbnail. What I did was I inverted this so that you'll get an idea of what a scanned negative would look like on your computer screen. And I also did a little bit of a color shift just so I can show you how that color shift neutralizer option, or whatever it's called, will work. So if I double click on this, we're in here and it looks like a negative, if you've ever seen a negative. So what I need to do is go over to customize, and I'm going to go over to this. I'm going to just collapse this. So now what I want to do is I want to invert the image. So if I click on this, it inverts the image. So now, yes, it is color, but as you can see, there's color shift in here. And if you take a look here, you'll see that this formerly brown wood on the outside of the barn is now green, and there's a green color cast throughout everything. So if I click on the color shift neutralizer, we get a curve. And by default, we have the linear curve, and we can choose any one of these 9 other presets, or we can just come in here and modify it ourselves. If I choose some of the other presets, they're going to get really weird looking. And you can see how the different curves have been adjusted to give you these looks. You might like some of these looks. I personally don't, so I'm going back to linear. And I know that I have too much green in here, so I'm going to go to the green curve. I'm just going to click right in the center, and I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. Keep bringing it down, and you can see now I have my blue sky back. I have my red truck back. I think I have a little bit of red in there. I'm not 100% sure. So I might want to go into the red and just bring that down ever so slightly. And then in the blue, I may want to raise that up just a little bit. Let's see if I go a lot. See, that's too much. So I'm just going to raise that up just ever so slightly to do that. And now I would find this to be acceptable. Does that make sense? Certainly hope so. Now, you can, if you've got a number of color negatives that you've scanned that are part of a series, so let's say all the rest of the images that I took this day out at Spring Ridge Farms, then I could go and create a preset exactly the way I did it last time. All right, I think this covers everything to deal with FilmPack 8 at this point. If there is something that you see that I have missed, please leave a comment. I'm also wanting to encourage you to click the like, subscribe, share, and notification buttons. It all helps my algorithms, especially if you leave a comment. You don't have to leave a big long comment, just thanks, John. This really helps. All right, great. Don't forget, in the description for this video is my affiliate link and links to other DxO software tutorials. This concludes the presets and customized tabs. Next up, accessing FilmPack 8 from within Photoshop, Lightroom Classic, and DxO Photo Lab. Thanks. Until next time, happy editing.